By the time you watch this video, Tears of the Kingdom might already be out. But I did want to give you my thoughts on what I believe are the top 5 Zelda games of all time. So let's not beat around the bush and let's dive right in. Number 5 is a game that I actually did not like when it first came out. Actually, when it was first announced, I did not like. I was very upset. And that is Wind Waker. Wind Waker released on the GameCube, and I remember when I first saw it, I was like, wait a minute, this is not the Zelda game I was promised. If you remember, the first time we saw a GameCube running Zelda, not really running Zelda, but like the tech demo, it was a more mature Link. Specifically, it looked like Link from Ocarina of Time and Ganondorf fighting, and the graphics were definitely more mature. It was a darker tone, and man, I was hyped. I was like, man, this is the way Zelda could be. Well, then later on we get something like Wind Waker, and I was disappointed. But when I did get my GameCube for the first time, I made sure to pick up Zelda because I love Zelda. I was like, you know what, this game might be good either way. Picked up my GameCube with both Zelda and Resident Evil 0, and guess what? Fell in love with it. It was definitely an amazing game, and it's honestly one of my favorite games now. Specifically number 5. Now that number 5 seat, I will say, does rotate quite often, but right now I'm putting it at number 5, specifically because that Dragon Roost Island music, oh man, so good, so good. But the gameplay mechanics were great. It was the first time that it added, I guess you can call it like the counter mechanic, the reaction mechanic. I don't remember the actual name of it. But basically, when you're fighting, if you press A at a certain time, you can do different moves such as like roll around behind and jump up and hit something. It's really cool, and I really enjoyed that. It was a nice twist to the combat that Zelda's known for. The dungeons were actually great. The only thing that I didn't like was the moving around the water, and specifically fighting the Triforce pieces. For that section of the game, everybody who's played it knows what I'm talking about. But I am glad that the Wii U HD remake, or remaster rather, did fix all those issues, sped up the traversal in the water, and also made that quest where you have to find the Triforce pieces a lot easier. But Wind Waker is my number 5. I highly recommend playing it if you haven't played it already. Number 4 is a more darker Zelda game, and that is Majora's Mask. Now the neat thing about Majora's Mask is Aonuma was actually the one who actually worked on this project. And for those of you who know Aonuma, he's actually heading Tears of the Kingdom. Now, I'm very excited for Tears of the Kingdom because I love the way Majora's Mask was. It was definitely a lot darker, and Aonuma had compared Tears of the Kingdom to Majora's Mask in terms of having a darker tone, so I'm very excited to see what goes on over there. Majora's Mask was very unique because the gameplay loop was basically, you have 3 days before the moon crashes to Termina, and if the moon crashes, it's basically game over. But the twist was you can use the Ocarina of Time to go back in time and continue doing that. Now, it was very much a, maybe not a roguelike, I guess you can consider it a roguelite, because you do go through, you complete stuff, and certain items will stick with you and certain things will stay completed, while others will reset to their previous time state at the time of that first day, and you will kind of have to do things. So for example, if you're in the middle of a dungeon and you don't complete the dungeon, well, guess what? When you revert back time, you're gonna have to start all over from that dungeon from day 1, meaning all the puzzles are not complete anymore. You'll have to go through, fight the bosses, all that good stuff. So you really have to beat those dungeons within the 3 days. And yeah, that might have put a lot of stress on you. You might be like, oh man, I gotta hurry up and go ahead and complete this dungeon. But it was very fun, and there was a lot of side quests. Specifically, this was the one that added a lot more side quests to Zelda and started adding those RPG elements, which I really enjoyed. I mean, a lot of the side quests were very fun. Collecting all the masks were fun. All the different abilities that the mask gave you was pretty cool, and the whole game and its mechanics were very cool. I really did enjoy Majora's Mask, and that's why it stays at number 4. Now, I'm probably going to get blasted for this one, but number 3 is Ocarina of Time. Yes, I know, Ocarina of Time is still one of my favorite games ever made, but there is another Zelda game that I believe, rather 2 Zelda games that I believe are better than Ocarina of Time, but we'll get into that later on. Ocarina of Time is an amazing game, and honestly, it's the blueprint of all adventure games. A lot of people were inspired by Ocarina of Time. I mean, anywhere from Sonic Adventure to even Dark Souls, all that was inspired by Ocarina of Time. The Z targeting system that was pretty much introduced in Ocarina of Time was just amazing. Not only that, the mechanics of time traveling, it was just, I remember my little brain just being amazed, like, what? You're telling me that this little Link turns into this big Link? And I was just like in awe of seeing the time travel, being a more grown-up adult Link, and which is funny. We call him Adult Link, but is he really an adult? I don't know. But anyways, you know, Adult Link was pretty awesome. Like, just everything about that game was amazing. The storytelling, everything that was going on, the world building, the quests, the dungeons. I mean, I can't think of one negative that the game has. And the 3DS version just made it even better. Updated the textures, just showed a lot more graphics fidelity, and I really love that. Honestly, I really hope that the 3DS version is somehow optimized for a single screen and just converted into a Nintendo Switch game, because I think the 3DS version is the best versions of Ocarina of Time. I mean, Ocarina of Time is such an impact on all these industries. You gotta look at speedrunners. Speedrunners do Ocarina of Time speedruns all the time because it's just an amazing game. And no puns intended. I know I'm saying time a lot, but Ocarina of Time is an amazing game. I highly recommend it. If you have not played a Zelda game, this probably should be your number one. Now, going on to number two, this was probably my favorite game of all time for the longest of time, and that is Link to the Past. Again, no puns intended. I know this has also to do with time, kind of, but Link to the Past was definitely one of my favorite games. I mean, honestly, Ocarina of Time kind of copied what Link to the Past did and just converted it into a 3D world. For example, you start off in Hyrule, you start off in an overworld, you collect the 3 pendants, you unlock the Master Sword, and then you go ahead and fight the wizard. I forgot his name, I can't pronounce his name rather. But once you beat him, you go to another world, the Dark World. Similar concept of Ocarina of Time. In Dark World, of course, is where Ganon was in prison, and you go through another set of dungeons, going through completing them to eventually fight Ganon. And honestly, just the whole story mechanics and everything, it basically is the blueprint of Ocarina of Time, and it just does what it does. But in my opinion, I kind of like the Dark World a little bit better than just a post-apocalyptic Hyrule. But it's kind of hard to compare the two. It's just Link to the Past is another blueprint to adventure games. The story beats, the way we go ahead and complete dungeons or complete any type of scenario really started off with Link to the Past. If Ocarina of Time was that in 3D, this is definitely the 2D, or rather I would say this is the start of it all. So yeah, Link to the Past is definitely my number 2. This is a game I highly recommend as well. A little bit of a side note when it comes to Link to the Past, I think it would be amazing and they remade that. Yeah, imagine that in the Breath of the Wild engine. Oof, so good. Now before I get into number 1, I do want to mention that I do feel that every Zelda game is good, except for the CDI one. But for the most part, every Zelda game is amazing. I mean, even Skyward Sword, which I did not like when it originally came to Wii, I did replay it on the Switch and I fell in love with it. Again, amazing story. The gameplay is actually really fun. Makes things easier where you have the right thumbstick to control the sword, even though it looks kind of weird. But for the most part, I loved it. Twilight Princess is another game that's amazing. The Oracle games are amazing. Like, when I think about it, it's kind of hard to put Wind Waker number 5 because all these other games are so good. Link's Awakening is another one. A lot of people have Link's Awakening as their favorite game of all time. Pretty much every Zelda game you play is amazing. Even Zelda 2. Yes, Zelda 2. If you play it with save states, it's actually a great game. So I highly recommend playing every single Zelda game, even if it's not on this list. Now, number 1. This game is my favorite game of all time, probably the best game ever made, and has again set the stage for what is an open world game. Now, if you look at the trend, Zelda has done that a lot. They've done that with Link to the Past, they've done it with Ocarina of Time, they even did that with the original Zelda game. But my number 1 pick is Breath of the Wild, which has now changed the way we look at open world games. Before, open world games were just giant games that had a bunch of quest markers and it's kind of like go out there and talk to the bubbles. And I hated that. Honestly, I used to hate open world games because I did not like that design. When Assassin's Creed turned into that, I just got very bored and it just became, oh, I have to go here, I have to go over here. It kind of felt like I was forced to do these things, even though technically I'm not being forced. But when I look at my mini-map and I see all of that, it kind of forces me to, okay, let's go ahead and see what this is. Breath of the Wild kind of did the opposite. They start you off, they get you a single objective, which is go ahead and defeat Ganon. And after that, how you defeat Ganon, when you defeat Ganon, all that was up to you. There were side quests such as, go ahead and visit Impa in Kakariko Village, But man, the first thing I did when I got off the Great Plateau was I looked for water. I want to go ahead and complete the water dungeon as fast as I can. Spoilers, there was no water dungeon, but I went going towards the water, wanted to look for things, wanted to look for Lake Hylia, I wanted to see the Zoros and all that stuff. And man, just the experience I had. Anytime I would go somewhere, complete a shrine, I would look around and I'd be like, oh wow, what's that over there? Let me go ahead and see what's that over there. And it was just amazing. And what makes it even better is, again, there's nothing telling you where to go or what to do. You're kind of doing this all on your own. Before I know it, before I even beat Ganon, I've already had searched the whole map. And that's because everything about the map was very interesting. Yeah, I get it, there weren't as many enemies, or you might have felt like there should have been more NPCs, but you gotta think about it. You're in a post-apocalyptic Hyrule, all the remaining civilizations pretty much hiding from Calamity Ganon, and basically all you're fighting is just the monsters. So yeah, it makes sense that NPCs are not going to be just roaming around. The few NPCs you do see roaming around is pretty cool because they'll get attacked by monsters, you can save them, get rewards, things like that. And just the world that it made felt so alive. I don't know how anybody can say the world's dead. Like, you gotta think, when it rained, NPCs will run to get into cover. You can be like out in the middle of anywhere and you'll see the NPCs react to different things. I think that's just amazing that wherever you went, the world was just a living, breathing world. Even the monsters acted different depending on what was going on, and I just love that. Tears of the Kingdom looks to build upon what made Breath of the Wild great. I mean, you can argue that Elden Ring was inspired by Breath of the Wild, which has a lot of similarities when you look at it, and a lot of games after Breath of the Wild have kind of changed. They changed the way their climbing system works. Assassin's Creed is a big one to look at that, where now you can pretty much climb on anything versus just certain spots. And that's a good thing, right? It made exploring a lot better. But yeah, Breath of the Wild is definitely my number one, and I can't wait to see what Tears of the Kingdom brings to the table. Hey, thanks for watching. Let me know what your top 5 Zelda games are. Probably not the same as mine, which, is okay. But for the most part, I think we probably have similar tastes. I mean, honestly, every Zelda game is good. Regardless of what your top 5 are, I think they're all amazing games. And it's really tough to make a top 5 list when it comes to Zelda. I can easily make it with like Final Fantasy and some of these other games, but when it comes to Zelda, it's very hard because I love them all. I enjoyed them all. They each have their pros, they each have their cons. Outside of like Breath of the Wild, Link to the Past, and Ocarina of Time, which you can call them the Triforce of Zelda, all the other ones are kind of up for grabs, so it's really hard to say, honestly. But yeah, let me know what you think are your top 5. Definitely put it in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to follow us over at Twitch. We do stream 3 days out of the week, and every Sunday we do have the podcast. My name is James from The Random Encounter, and we'll see you next time.